Award-winning poet and recording artist Thabiso Afurakan Mohare's work has been featured in some of the best publications in the world, while he has now compiled a collection of his poems and produced a poetry book titled The Broken Men Chapbook, a read that aims to revive the true meaning of what it means to be a real man. Mohare has been active in the industry since 2002. He's also established himself as one of the pioneers in the South African spoken word landscape. Well, he joins me now in studio to tell us more about his latest offering. Very good morning to you, Thabiso, and welcome to Morning Live.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, tell us about what's been the biggest influence that led you to write this book.
I think, you know, the conversations that have been happening, I mean, you know, the latest explosion was #MEnAreTrash, and, you know, the kind of reactions I saw from men. I think for me, you know, by the time we get to that, it's women now saying, all right, it's happening every day now. There's all sorts of abuse, all sorts of murders, all sorts of rape. What must happen now, you know? And I think for men, it's no longer a question of, but I'm a good guy, or not all men. It's about, we have a national crisis. So what can we do as men? If I'm not a perpetuator, what am I doing in my immediate world to start having conversations with my brothers, with my uncles, with my grandfathers, with, you know, the different men in my space? How do we start calling each other out, you know? Because men are raping women, men are killing women, you know? So it feels like the dialogue has been happening one side, where women, you know, are constantly looking for solutions. How do we, you know, feel safer? But what are the men doing? You know, if they're the perpetrators, then what kind of conversations are we having? What kind of change in behavior do we need to have? You know, what kind of role models do we need to start molding for young men growing up? So I think for me, the book came from that, to say, what voice can I add to the conversation, and how can we broaden it, especially within the creative sector and amongst young people as well.
All right, so is that the main theme that is carried out throughout your book? Yeah,
so I think in the book, I mean, it's set in Johannesburg. It's poetry, a short collection of poetry. It's set in Johannesburg, but through it, we look at the different things that happen in Johannesburg, you know, whether it's sugar daddies picking up young girls at UJ and Wits, you know. So I've got a poem about that called Blues for Madiba. And a lot of the poems are short. It's about sparking the conversation. It's identifying these different things that happen, power and corruption, money and power, you know, sex and violence, love and ownership, you know. These are all different themes that we go through in everyday life. These are the themes that, you know, exist when men and women interact, you know. So for me, the book is about giving men some sort of language, some sort of starting point that we can start having conversations. So when we are having beers, yes, let's still have beers, hang out as boys, have brides, but let's start having real conversation. Let's stop lying to each other. You know, let's stop condoning and permitting behavior that's abnormal. You know, sometimes it starts with just talk. You know, your boy says something and you laugh about it, but you know it's wrong. You know what I mean? So when do we start calling each other out? So in the book, it's about those little scenarios that happen in this great city to black men especially, you know, and how do we start navigating those different themes.
And I think the impact of this book will be that men will get to hold the mirror to themselves and see the true reflection, and, as you say, start to have those important conversations. But what I saw as I was paging through the artworks, that deeply resonated with me. What impact do they seek to have already on the strong spoken word that is in this book?
I think for me, photography, for example, and poetry, it's sort of, you know, two different media, but the same impact, you know. So with words, you're literally recreating the image line by line, word by word. Photography, you know, snapshot. So for me, illustrations was the best way to go to bring out some of the deeper meanings. So with the poems, I try to compress meaning. I try to allow the reader to unpack it for themselves. And the illustration, I think, drives it. It helps give you the setting as well. It helps give you deeper, maybe, context or emotions or feeling, or even color, if you want to add to that. to what's going on, you know. So I've been lucky to work with Wesley Pepper and Sean Froley, who've contributed their artwork to the book as well. And I think for me, it brings it to life as well, you know, and starts depicting and giving face, at least to some of the scenarios that men find themselves in. I mean, there's a poem about Marikana, you know, and Wesley Pepper did a sketch for that, you know, just depicting a normal life in Marikana, you know, between men and women trading and so forth. So for me, the sketches and the illustrations about bringing some of the poetry to life and giving the reader sort of a broader perspective of some of the messages I'm trying to bring across.
Well, off air, we briefly spoke about the reaction that you received to this book. Has it made you a less popular chap?
In some circles, yes, but on a, you know, on a broader scale, I think men are appreciating the conversation. Sometimes, you know, men you know, need examples. So when they see another man do it, another man have uncomfortable conversations, then they start doing it themselves as well. You know, sometimes you'll realize that people don't know, men don't know. Oh, okay, I grew up behaving this way. I thought it was normal. Yes, maybe I'm ignorant and so forth. But then until another man says, but look, here's the mirror, you know, let's talk about it, and then realize, actually, I need to change. You know, there's a lot of things, yes, there's a lot of things that we have done in our past, growing up in this sort of patriarchal, you know, misogynistic world, that's sort of, you know, male-oriented and so forth. There's a lot of things that we've done that only now, because we've got the language, we've got the examples, we've been called out, we've seen other people being called out. Now we can go back and say, wow, in high school, what was I doing? You know what I mean? In varsity, what was I doing? How has my relationship been with black women? You know, has it always been from a position of power? You know, have I been abusive? Have I raped? You know, a lot of men are not even are scared to even ask themselves that question. And when we talk about rape, we're not even talking about you overpower a woman and you physically hold it down and you violently, you know, abuse her. There's soft forms of rape. You see what I mean? Duress is quite a broad spectrum, you know, so getting men to start thinking your power, money and cars, that's soft power, that's influence. And you consciously use that to get to young girls, you know what I mean? And that is rape. In my context, that is rape. You're using duress. You see what I mean? So starting to spread that and starting to think deeper, that's where you see the risk. A lot of men are, there's violent reaction about it, you know, like, no, not me, I'm a good man, I take care of my family. That's not enough. You know, some men appreciate it because they open up. We had a talk in Pretoria this past Sunday, you know, with men. Some of them left because it was uncomfortable, you know, but I appreciate the men who engage. It has to start somewhere.
Yeah, Thabiso, this is an absolutely powerful book. Thank you so much for making the time to chat to us.
Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. That's a poet and recording artist, Thabiso Afurakan Mohare, and he's been speaking to us about his latest project, and that's a poetry collection book titled The Broken Men Chapbook.